First, it's always a pleasure to welcome here my esteemed predecessor at the helm at St. Rita's, Father Busey. Let's give him a warm welcome. Unfortunately, Father Busey declined my offer to preach, so you're stuck with my babblings. As the natural world around us dies in November, as the church year rapidly approaches its end, the church puts before us, in those uncertain terms, the mystery of death. The scriptures for these last few weeks remaining in the liturgical year focus on that mystery. Today's are no exception. Graphically, the first reading. Unfortunately, they left out a lot of the real gory details. If you want some good nighttime reading, look up the rest of that from Maccabee's second book and see all the good stuff they left out. And then, of course, in the gospel as well. Linked the first reading in the gospel is the fact that 7 brothers were involved in both. Today we confront the issue of the resurrection of the dead. When I was in seminary, we learned a simple little ditty to remember who didn't believe in the resurrection. The Sadducees were sad, you see, because they didn't believe in the resurrection. Judaism 2,000 years ago was quite unlike the Judaism of today. There are at least 3 or 4 major sects of Judaism. The Judaism that we have today mainly descended from the Pharisaical Judaism, the Judaism that survived after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in 70 AD by the emperors Vespasian and Titus. But it was much more complicated at the time of Jesus. And when we say the Sadducees did not believe in the resurrection, it's a little more complicated than that as well. It's not that they did not believe in some sort of life after death. Their traditional Jewish belief had been in Sheol, the shadow dwelling, where all would go after death, whether good or bad. Basically, everything was just shadowy, gray, dull. Kind of like the rest of the world outside our beautiful jewel of the ark. The Pharisees introduced a revolutionary new belief. They were the ones who started to believe in the resurrection of the body from the dead, and the idea of reward and punishment, the good to heaven, the wicked to Gehenna, hell. And the word Gehenna was simply the name given to the stinking, burning garbage pit outside the city of Jerusalem. It was truly a hellish place, so it seemed to be a fitting description, a fitting word to use for hell. The Sadducees, in their battle with the Pharisees, tried to trip Jesus up with their ridiculous story about 7 men marrying 1 woman, one after the other, and all dying childless. Jesus, of course, as he often did when arguing either with the Pharisees or Sadducees or whomever, was wise enough not to fall into their trap. He didn't go in detail trying to debunk the story. He simply stressed the reality of the resurrection. And to compare that to the earthly reality misses the point. Heaven is so much more than anything we can even begin to imagine. To try to apply our worldly ideas is always going to miss the point. But Jesus, in the final words, in quoting Moses, gets to the heart of the matter. If you remember at the burning bush, and Moses approached and God said, "Come no closer, this is holy ground." When he pushed the issue, who's talking to me? When we said, "Ayer I say I am. I am being who I am being. I will be who I will be. I am who I am. And I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob." And Jesus' point would be that God would not identify himself as the God of people who were dead and rotting in the ground. He's the God of the living. And so if he said he was the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, that meant darn well that Abraham, Jacob, Isaac were not dead, but were indeed alive. And that all were promised that eternal life, that resurrection from the dead, that bodily resurrection. At the end of the year, as scriptures, the church puts these scriptures before us. It's a good time to ask ourselves, what do we really believe about life and death? It is crucial. Everything depends on it. Father Jerry the other day in weekday mass, I think it was Friday here, hammered home the point of how we don't know who will be here tomorrow and who won't. He was able to draw upon the example of Lou DeSimon here almost every morning. Then on his way to church on All Saints Day, ended up going to the hospital and gone within minutes. Unexpected. We don't know the hour nor the day of our own demise. So we must ask, and that is why the church ends the year putting these issues before us, to force us to ask ourselves, to look into our own hearts and lives, and ask, what do I believe? You know, when we die, we don't become some bodiless angel spirits floating about. That's the whole point of Jesus' resurrection. We rise in the body transformed. A body we can't even begin to imagine. But still, this body that I have here and now. How much do I really believe that? These weeks, these days at the beginning of November, we offer masses praying for all the souls, all those who have gone before us. Do we really believe that our prayers have an effect? Do we really believe there's a purpose in dying for someone, for praying for someone who is dead? Do we ever stop to think about it at all? In our world today, where we try to push death as far away as possible, out of view, out of mind, I don't think many of us do. We never stop to ask the big questions, the important questions. If this is all there is, and as St. Paul says, we are in the worst shape of all. We are the most pitiable of all people. Especially since we come here and go through the motions. For what? Do we believe those who have gone before us are not gone, but only await that great reunion. I struggled with faith some time after college. I never dreamed of being a priest, that's for sure. I made the mistake of praying for faith, and God gave me more than I bargained for. But for me, it was an intellectual journey because that's the way my brain works. I had to convince myself. And rather than worrying about all those other things, there was one issue that I was true or false, and if it was true, I could believe anything else that came down the pike, and if it wasn't true, then why bother with anything? Did this person, Jesus Christ, rise from the dead? Oh, and I explored that from every possible angle. Maybe even he was an alien, and when he ascended into heaven, he was just going back to the mothership. And trust me, go online. There are a lot of people who will say things like that. It's not an original idea. At the end of the day, reading and reading and reading, prayer and prayer and prayer, I came to the conclusion that you could not in any logical way explain Christianity except that this person, Jesus Christ, did rise from the dead and was experienced by those who had seen him hanging in death on the cross, who had watched him be put into the grave. And then once one believes that, then the rest is child's play. Do we believe in that resurrection? It's not a hypothetical question, but truly a question upon which everything depends. Do we believe? We just think when the end comes, that's it. Or more likely than not, have we just not bothered to really ask the question and to answer? Year in, year out, the church gives us these weeks at the end of the liturgical year to ponder the final things. Maybe this year we should seize that opportunity and ask, do I believe in the resurrection of the dead, life